Today's conversation may challenge us, but it will also strengthen us because naming the truth is never weakness, it is courage. My guest, Steven Eichenblatt, lived through abandonment, silence, and unanswered questions. And instead of letting that break him, he chose to seek understanding, accountability, and healing. This is a story about reclaiming your voice, a story about standing up for the child you once were, and a reminder that even the most painful chapters do not get to define the whole book. We are not here to relive trauma, we are here to witness transformation. If at any point something feels heavy, breathe. Let your body guide you. You are in control of your pace. Let's step into this with honesty and strength. Hi, I'm Abby Dominguez. This is Heart to Heart with Abagaba podcast, and I'm so glad you're here. I spent over a decade as a nanny and teacher, learning from children and families around the world. Now I bring those lessons to you, heart to heart conversations with people from all walks of life, sharing stories of love, laughter, and resilience that remind us of the power of connection and community. Subscribe today and join our village of heart to heart listeners. Steve, thank you so much for this moment right here on Heart to Heart with Abagaba. I'm so honored to have you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm happy and honored to be here, and really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak with your listeners and you about my story.
Wonderful. Before we go into the harder parts of your story, I'd love to begin with you, who you were as a child. What did you love and what lit you up?
I wrote this memoir, Pretend They're Dead, and there's two stories within the book that are things that I'm still passionate about, and I was passionate about as a kid. Maybe three things. One was reading. I loved to read from a very early age, and the reading kind of saved me because I'd get books and kind of hide in the closet from the violence in my house. And I still love to read, but I just that's one thing that lit me up a lot, and certain books lit me up. And then I loved sports, any sport, and that was, I baseball, football, whatever it was, I played that, and I loved to fish from the time I was a little kid, and I spent a lot of time alone trying to, finding places to fish and and I enjoyed that, and that kept me out of the house because when you live in a house of violence, the goal is to stay out of stay out of the house. So, but those things I still love to fish. I still love sports. I still love to read, and of course, I love now that I have kids, my kids, spending time with my kids.
Nice. Your father, Alan Nestle, left when you were around 8. Before that, what kind of father was he? Were you close?
He was a veterinarian, and he spent most of his time at work. I don't remember doing that much with him. I can't say we were close because I was so young. He left when I was 8, but my parents got separated, and he left the house probably when I was 5 or 6. So he wasn't the dad that took you to football games or played catch with you or did any of the things the other dads did.
Mhm.
He was more likely to just take me to like the coffee shop, and he would smoke his cigarettes and read the paper while I sat there. So,
Mm.
I mean, but he was my father. He was my father, and it's who I had, and it still hurt when he disappeared.
And when he left, I imagine that changed everything. What was that moment like for you, and how did your family adjust in the years
It,
after?
the moment he left, when you're that young, I don't think I was really completely aware of what the consequences of him leaving, was, because he spent so much time at work that he wasn't home that much, and when he was home, my parents were fighting. But when he left and he got his own apartment, that's when it starts hitting you that wow, he's I'm only going to see him like, 1 day a week. And so you feel very insecure, you feel uncertain, you feel sadness. I don't think I cried. Um, and I probably was sad. I'm saying I felt sadness, but the transition was when he stopped seeing us and never came back. And my mother married a man who wound up adopting us. And and that transition, which I described in the book, but was, and I can go into if you want, it was um, shocking.
You mentioned your mom eventually remarried and Richard became a big part of the story. What stands out to you about that season of your life?
Uh, I think now when I look back at it, I think the words are shock and awe, pain, because he um, he moved into our house, the house that I had been in, that my biological father bought. So he moved into our house with his 4 kids. We weren't told. I wasn't told. They never told us they were getting married. So we just showed up from a weekend and talked about it in the book with my grandparents and theirs, my new father and his 4 kids, and these are my new brothers and sisters, and all of a sudden all these rules were laid out. Just and one of this, like a simple rule was we were from the time he moved in, we were no longer allowed to walk in the front door. We had to go to the back of the house if we wanted to go in the house. And just that simple rule was pretty shocking and startling. And um, along with just the way the house ran after that, there's so many things because you go from a house with 3 kids to 7 kids or 9 people, and who don't know each other. It's pretty chaotic.
Later, you discovered something heartbreaking that your father had actually sought help, and the advice he was given changed everything. Can you walk us through that?
Yes. So there, I spent 10 years writing this Pretend They Are Dead, my book. And uh, the Pretend They Are Dead comes from the advice he got from a psychiatrist years after he had died. Years after he died, I discovered he is a writer, and I found an article was mailed to me, a magazine article that had been published, and it's about the last night that he spent with his kids before he drove away and didn't come back. And in that, he talks about why he did what he did, and he said that he consulted with a psychiatrist, and a psychiatrist told him just pretend they are dead. And that's what he did. He obviously took that advice, which was not really very good advice for him or for me. I mean, it's crazy, but that's the story that he writes out there. And when I say pretend they're dead, it's kind of like ghosting somebody in today's world that they're there and you're talking to them or texting with them, whatever. Then they're disappeared, they're gone, and everybody associated with them is gone. And that's what happened, and that's why I made that the title is. And it ruined his life. There's no, and as you read the book, you'll learn it tortured him. But we live within 2 miles of his office and where he worked and where he lived and never saw him.
What did that bring up in you? Living close and never seeing him, and
It, It was, I know I don't know your whole story, but I'm sure you've experienced when you're a kid, you're kind of like, these are the cards you're dealt. It's like, this is just the way it is from now on. And you just have to go along with it. So, um, and in my house, because there was so much fear, because my adoptive father, Richard, was, it was like living in a minefield. If you turned the wrong way or looked at him, he would yell at you or strike you or whatever it was. And so it really became unstable for me. And but also it was just how my life was. So as a kid, you learn to adjust to your daily life is a lot different than your neighbors.
then came that day that changed your life again, the crash. It's
Yeah.
such a powerful moment in your story. Take your time. What do you remember most from that day?
I was working at these tennis courts and I was 16, and I was alone. And I was alone on the tennis courts and I was working, and it was the 4th of July, 1975, before you were born, probably. And but I was working, and when I look back at the story, and if you believe in God or spiritual things, like just that I was alone on because the July 4th, there's usually a lot of people playing tennis on these courts, but and as I was sweeping the courts, um, I heard this screeching sound of a tire squealing, and it's just kind of all slow motion, and a car hits a telephone pole, 20, 30 feet from where I'm standing. And I don't know if you or your listeners have seen a car crash or been in one, but it's like you're living in slow motion. It's like you're living in this dream world because this is a very violent crash. And my heart is racing, and I ran up and I see a guy had gone through the windshield, a man, and I ran to the payphone, heart pumping, panicking, not sure what to do. And I picked up the payphone. I called the operator because back then there was no 911. And I just remember like it was like it's like you're like living a dream or something, but it was a nightmare. And I ran back up there, and by that time, like the police had gotten there and neighbors, and they had this guy against the side of the car, and his face had been cut into because he went through the windshield, and he was obviously very significantly hurt, unconscious. And as I was standing there, I felt that feeling like when you're somewhere and you feel somebody staring at you, even though you don't see him, you just can tell somebody's looking at you. And I felt that energy. And I'm a kid, and I felt that energy, and I started to turn to walk away, and then I looked, and he was staring at me with his eye, basically cut in half, and he just was looking at me, and I didn't know what to make of it, and I started to turn. I was going to ride back, and the police officer took out his wallet and said, "Does anybody know this man?" And his name was Alan Nessel, and I didn't say anything, but that was my biological father, and that was my reunion with him. So that was pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy.
That is, I cannot even imagine.
And trauma, we all respond to it in different ways. And I was a teenage boy living in New Jersey, doing a lot of partying, doing a lot, I was just kind of all over the place, never wanting to really be at my house, and you don't have places to go. So I just got on my bike. It was my Schwinn 10-speed blue, I remember, and I rode to my friend's house. Well, I went home, didn't say anything, rode to my friend's house, and I never told anybody I was there, and witnessed it, and probably saved his life for till I was in my 40s.
What helped you to finally begin to face it? You held your experience privately for decades. What helped you finally begin to face it? And what did you discover about the truth of that day?
Sure, that's great. Great question. A few questions in there. Um, there's different answers to that question along the way, and this is something because today I know in today's world everybody's dealing with anxiety at a different level. There's so many kids out there and teenagers and young people dealing with anxiety and not knowing what to do about it, and maybe going for therapy or whatever it was. But for me, I kind of hit rock bottom. I didn't know what I was doing with my life, and I didn't think much about the car accident. But I'd had some really bad moments with my adopted father, and I wound up running away and went to Israel, and went and found a kibbutz to live on, which I heard a lot about. kibbutzes now because of all that happened on October 7th. I found a kibbutz to live on, which and I worked at, like basically as a farmer for 6 days a week. Never really called my parents for it was about 6 months. They knew I was in Israel, but there wasn't a lot of communication. There's not a lot of reason to communicate with them. But on the kibbutz, there was a library, and I would sit because I love to read. And I would go to the library and there's all these self-help books like Dale Carnegie and Zig Ziglar and all these books. And I started reading them. And like, it's like somebody hit me over the head, with a hammer, like, wow, nobody's going to do this for me. If I'm going to get myself together, I need to get up and do it. That self-help meaning, help yourself, like it kind of caught me. And I
Yeah.
say that, yeah, I say that in today's context because in today's there's so many kids out there that they're going through anxiety, but you have to cope, you have to learn how to cope. And I learned myself because I had no choice. So that was a big moment for me. And after that, I realized I need to get on a better, a better path. And I kind of forgot the second half of your question. So
Oh, so I was asking that you held that experience privately for decades. What helped you finally begin to face it, and what did you discover about the truth of that day?
oh, sure. Yeah. So once I got myself sort of together, and I went back to school and focused on, I wound up getting through school and becoming a lawyer and learning that to help people. Uh, I reconnected with my biological father. I decided that, I'm going to knock on his door and see if I could find out, what happened, who he was. Um, so I went up to New Jersey, knocked on his door when I was 20 years old. He didn't know who I was. He was in pretty bad shape, almost like somebody with special needs. Like, he'd had a brain injury from the car crash. He had survived, but he had a brain injury. And we really didn't develop much of a connection. He was very hard to talk to, and he wound up passing away a little bit after the time I saw him. And after he passed away, I discovered that he had been a writer, not just a veterinarian, and he had spent his entire life writing, keeping journals, having magazines published. I mean, he wrote every day of his life between 1960 and like 1990 when he died. He would sit probably stay up all night. He definitely had a drug issue, no question about it, as I learned from his writing. Um, and when I picked up, so I wound up with all of his writing, and I talk about that in the book, but I wound up with this huge box, thousands of pages of just insane stuff. Like it is crazy the stuff that he would write about. And I'm his son and I'm reading this stuff, and I didn't know him because he left me. He abandoned me. I didn't know him. And but I wanted to see about the car accident. Like, what was that? Was that a coincidence? And I had that box in my office for years without even looking at it because I was afraid. When I finally opened it up and I read about the car crash, it had turned out he'd hired an investigator to get pictures of us because he had contacted my mother and my adoptive father about pictures, and they said no. And so he hired somebody to find us. He found out that I worked at this tennis club, um, and he goes into a lot of detail, but the short version is on that July 4th, he was at his office. He took two or three Xanax or some kind of medication. I mean, he writes that, so it's not, and he took the Xanax, took a little shot of vodka or whatever, got in his car and decided he was going to drive by, the tennis courts. And the big question, and so he drove by the courts and he writes about when he regained consciousness and looked up, he saw me. He wrote like Steve question mark. And I talk about it, it's in the book, like word for word what he wrote. But he definitely saw me. And my question had always been, would he have, if he hadn't hit the pole, would he have actually stopped to talk to me since I was there? And I don't think he would have. I don't think he had the ability to do that. But But that was pretty mind-blowing to read the details of that of the accident itself and how it happened.
Did reading his words give you understanding, compassion, forgiveness, or something else entirely?
A lot of forgiveness. We all make judgments about things, and you can read something on the internet now that's complete BS and it's false, and it's just they throw crazy stuff out there. My biological father wrote that, like I mentioned, wrote thousands of pages, and it took me years to get through all of it. And the pages were like single space typed on like yellow typing carbon sheets that people used to use back then. And then he would also type on whatever piece of paper was around. So there's like calendars, journals on calendars, on the backs of napkins, on, anything that you could think of, he would, you know, sit there all day and
I was
type. And
passionate about writing.
he was very passionate about writing, and he actually taught at the new school. But he was crazy. He was like brilliant and crazy at the same time. So going through his writing, um, some of it was impossible to understand. Some of it was absolutely brilliant. He would write about political things. He would write about, what's happening that day. He would write these stories and descriptions, but he also wrote a good amount about us and his family and the kids. And it was very clear that he had made a major mistake and he knew it, and that he loved us and thought about us all the time, um, but didn't know how to cope with it. He wasn't a strong person, and he didn't have the ability to come knock on our door or seek me out or find me. Um, which I don't think there's an excuse for that. But I did find, later on, as I met him, and then he wrote me some letters, and he talked about, loving us, but not knowing how to say it, not being able to say it, not being able to show it. He was a man of that generation with a lot of problems who did not know how to love somebody else or show love for somebody else.
Did all the writing and the words help you make sense of what happened to you? I mean, what happened between you?
It did. I mean, it definitely did. Getting the story about, the last night that he spent with us, and there's a lot of details in there about uh the divorce, and we were in the middle of a custody battle, and when he gave us up, the thing that also hurt as bad as losing him, maybe even worse, was I never saw my grandparents again. My grandmother, my grandfather. I saw my grandmother later on, years later, but my grandfather, who had been this World War II hero, he was a Marine, and he's a bus driver, and liked to drink Budweiser, and lived in Bayonne, New Jersey, in Jersey City, but he was my Papa Charlie was his name, and he was actually born in Poland. My grandmother had married him, and he was just, I miss him. I missed him. And when he died, he wanted to see me, but I didn't know that. There's no way for me to know. But I learned a lot uh, about my biological father's life, a lot of things I didn't want to know, but because he wrote about everything, including his dating life. And that's not in the book.
You've turned so much of your pain into purpose through your work as an advocate and as a father yourself. How does those experiences reshape your idea of what it means to show up?
Oh man, that's a great, great, great question. And um, I was the kid who watched the other boys, playing catch with their dads or whatever, and because I like to play sports, and I didn't spend 5 minutes with either of my fathers alone ever. I mean, I can't, like, people don't believe it. I'm like, I am telling you, we didn't do things like that. We didn't spend any time together. And so when I had kids, and I have 5 kids myself, I spent every second I could with them, like every second.
Beautiful.
And I would. even like my son, he didn't. I coached Little League and I coached those sports, but I wasn't a madman. I wasn't a maniac. I was probably too gentle with my kids because of what I had been through, and I didn't want them to experience that. But and then being a guardian ad litem, going to court and fighting for kids that have been in horrific circumstances. Just today. Abigail, and if I would show you, but just today I got a text message from I represented as a guardian ad litem. For those that don't know, is the court will appoint a lawyer to represent children in the middle of either a custody battle or children that are born to mothers who have had drug problems or have been sexually molested or abused, or they're taken out of the home. And the court has to decide what to do with them. And so they're appointed a lawyer. So I was a volunteer lawyer called guardian ad litem for the kids. And I've been doing it for 30 years. And just today, it makes me feel so good because I represented these children, these two precious little, beautiful little kids. And they had been sexually abused by their parents and taken away from their parents. And an older man who like was a mechanic wound up adopting them through a long process. But today he sent me a text and with the pictures of the kids because they both play instruments of them playing instruments in their school. And he said, Steve, they wanted you to see him playing these instruments. And that means a lot. It means a lot.
That means a lot. The way you show up for your children and other children, all children, your children, including others, what does that mean to the child you once were?
You know, well, again, you're asking some really great questions because it makes me think, and it I mean, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel great to have a connection with my kids, all my kids, and to see them doing well, and to know that I can connect with them anytime I want and they don't hate my guts. Um, uh,
Oh,
but and I adopted my youngest. I mean, there are some days I make sure I talk to. I'll just text them. We're in a world of texting, and so yeah, it makes me feel great. It makes me feel great to share things, with them. And I'm also a person who went through two divorces. I'm happily married now, but because of my childhood, I was not. It took me a long time to really learn how to be present in a relationship, as my ex-wives will tell you. They'll tell you Steve's a great guy, but he's disconnected in relationships. But I've learned, I had a lot of therapy because I have five kids from three different mothers. That's it's pretty good.
I'm with you. For anyone listening who is holding a story of distance or loss with a parent, what would you want them to know today?
The that have lost a parent, you're saying?
So, estrangement, for anyone listening who's,
Oh,
yeah, still
I,
holding.
yeah. It's very like cliche to say, oh, you better if they may not be here tomorrow if you don't contact them. But I think that anybody who's estranged from their parents should make the effort to do whatever it is to connect with them. Just have a connection with them. It doesn't mean that you have to have this incredible relationship because you're not going to resolve. There's obviously incredible conflict that went on, but just to be able to talk to them and have some level of relationship. I mean, I
Yeah,
would encourage anybody to even just take it like one step at a time, one step at a time, make the effort. And
yes,
because that way, if something, God forbid, happens to them or to you, you don't want to leave this earth without at least having been able to say that you made the effort to contact them. So I would pick up the phone and or whatever it takes and try to make the connection. And if they're not willing to, at least you tried, and it's I mean life is, I hate saying that life's too short, but the reality is there's nothing like family
yes.
and people make big mistakes, especially when you're young. And I would love to hear how you reconnected with your mom.
So, thank you for asking that. And I'm so with you on forgiveness and contacting the other parents, or whatever the relationship may be, I did contact. Okay, so my mother's sister's son. So my cousin gave me her phone number, and I was so afraid to call. I had the number with me for a month, and I was
Yeah.
so afraid of connecting with her because I did not think she knew me because I did not know her. I just knew her legal name, date of birth, and just a, just a few things. So I didn't think she knew me. So I was afraid to call of rejection, but I got over my fear and I give her a phone call, and she was the most warmest, beautiful person. And I'm with you. Doesn't mean you have to have this whole relationship with them, but at least do your part and honor them and call them. It freed me, and I got to know many wonderful things about her. Had I not reached out, I would have missed out. So thank you for your advice. I love it. I support it.
No, that's incredible. And in reading a lot of my father's journals, one of the things that made me angry and I resented when I was reading it is he said, well, the kids have never contacted me. This is when we were living in the same town and I was like a 10-year-old and he wrote about, well, they could have contacted me if they wanted to. And that's just not how he was the adult, I was the kid. But then when and I write a chapter about this, and if you have a chance, you should read it because when I went and knocked on his door, I was so nervous. I was so afraid to just knock on his door that he wouldn't know who I was or how he was going to react. And picking up the phone, that's just as hard, you
It's
know.
hard. I'm with you. I am so with you. I've lived it. And so I understand so much how hard it is to it may seem like pick up the phone and call, but it was not easy.
People who haven't been in that situation don't understand. And then I have plenty of friends who have these dads or moms they complain about, and especially like when they're complaining about their fathers. And I'm like, you have no idea. You don't
Mm-mm,
because
mm-mm.
my father that adopted me was not he was not a warm-hearted person. He was mean, really mean.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and so people, you have to certainly take advantage of your kids when you are close to them and hug them. And I'm not a great hugger, but I'm working on it.
I am so proud of you for investing in your children and others and making them feel loved, important, valued, heard, appreciated, and the list can go on. Thank you for that example because we
Sure,
don't have to live in the past and to rise about it and make a difference.
that's right.
So
It's
wonderful. Do you have a website we can follow you? Where can we find your books and any?
sure. For people listening, so I am a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for a long time, and if anybody needs help with anything or just wants to run something by, I mean, in the family law arena, or they need somebody in whatever town or state they're in, just call me. It's Page and Eichenblatt, Eichenblatt. That's the name of our firm. My website is www.stevenscotteichenblatt.com, and and also Page and Eichenblatt. And my book is called Pretend They Are Dead. It's on Amazon, and I would appreciate anyone who wants to support it to check it out. I think it's helped a lot of people, and I've gotten incredible reviews and responses from people from all over the place. It's been pretty overwhelming, but if somebody has you don't want to go to war with your spouses, your kids become collateral damage. If you're going through a divorce, you got to keep your eye on the ball on these things. And sometimes you have to swallow your pride and apologize or whatever it takes, but don't put your kids in the middle of these battles because you'll wind up like I did without a dad.
Yes. Thank you so much, Steve, for sharing your truth with such courage and clarity. Your story reminds us that healing is not about erasing the past. but learning to live open hearted through it. Thank you for choosing your story out loud. Your voice will help someone named Dear. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. This is great. It's an honor to be on the show. You're great. Really, really, you really are. It's great what you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. I so appreciate you. As we close today, I want to say this plainly. What happened to us in childhood matters, but it does not get to tell the final story. The pain you've carried is real, but so is your resilience. So is your capacity to rise. Healing is not forgetting. Healing is choosing what you will carry forward and what you will finally put down. If you recognize yourself in Stephen's story, I want you to remember you were not what was done to you. You are what you choose next. You do not have to walk backward. You are allowed to grow beyond what you survived. Thank you for showing up today with courage. And thank you, Stephen, for showing us what reclaiming your own story can look like. We rise, we grow, we continue. Take care. Thank you for sharing this space with us on Heart to Heart with Abagaba. I hope this conversation inspired you to keep moving forward in hope and light. If this episode spoke to you, please share it with someone you love. Leave us a review and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a moment of inspiration, connection, and joy. May your home be filled with peace, your heart with joy, and your spirit with the quiet strength of love. Until next time, take care of your heart, take care of each other, and keep celebrating the love that makes us family.